I've got a background in conceptual interior design, and so I kind of like used to design spaces to make them really ergonomic and like feel good. And there was a lot of psychology of space involved in like making people feel good, even though they don't quite know why. And it always comes back, like I always have this image in my mind of doing 3D programming and kind of making a space in 3D, and you can, so you design it in whatever program you're using, and then you can zoom out and zoom in and kind of like go in different ways. And it's really interesting to see what you can zoom out and look from above, and it'll look completely different to if you zoom in and look in from a corner with a different, and it's perspective. That's what perspective is. But like, who gets to say what it looks like? Because from every single angle that you look at it, it's exactly the same thing, but it looks completely different. And I find like that's a beautiful way that you can see it in like a video game or that kind of stuff. But ultimately, we're all kind of in our own video game, and we're looking from here, and we're just like, oh, if you could just like close your eyes, zoom out, get out of your head, get out of your emotional little bubble, and actually see what's going on.
Yeah.
It's very freeing.
It is. Welcome to Tune In Radio U podcast. I am your host, Ruth, and with me today I have the magical soul that is Cha Higginson. Cha is many things, among them a healer and a transformation mentor, I should say. Cha, welcome. Thank you so much for taking the time to be on my podcast. I really appreciate you being here. Can you tell us what exactly it is that you do with your clients? What do you call yourself? What is it?
Well, first, thanks so much for having me, Ruth. You know what? I still find it hard to articulate. And when I work with people, I ask them if they can kind of tell me in their own words, and they find it very difficult to articulate as well. But ultimately, what I do is I work a lot with mindset, and I work a lot with the energetic body and the soul. So it seems really ethereal what I do. It's very difficult to kind of put into black and white terms. But the way I can explain it is I help people get out of their own way, because basically it's always us in our own way, and we're all limited by belief systems that we've picked up along the way, that we've been given, or that we've created ourselves, but we don't realize what they are. So I help people kind of identify why they believe what they believe, whether it works for them or it doesn't. If it doesn't, we go back and we kind of go, okay, well, let's look at this situation. This is what you interpreted from it. But actually, when we look at it with a more conscious perspective, this is what truly happened. And we can change that belief just by going back and really seeing the truth in what was there and just changing that perspective. But then it's really a blend of lots of different modalities. And why I find it very hard to explain is that everyone's so individual. So I do hypnotherapy, but it's not one of those things where sometimes I get asked, like, can you just do a very standard recording? And the fact is, well, no, well, I can, but it won't work for everybody, because everyone has specific words and specific ways of feeling or sensing the world around them. So there's no one blanket solution for everyone. So I work individually with that person to get them the result that they want, that's in the highest good for them and for everyone, really. And sometimes what that looks like is that sometimes it's not what you think you want. So I help people also understand that. Sometimes they'll come with me and tell me, like, this is my problem. And what we establish is that that's not a problem at all. Like, there's something completely different going on. And I'll always solve the problem that needs to be solved in that moment. So I don't serve people's mind. I really go to their soul and go, like, what do you want on a soul level? What is your deepest desire? And let's get you there, because your mind is I love the mind. I think it's brilliant, but it's honestly the dumbest part of us. It really is.
I agree. I've come to the conclusion that logic is only logical when you know everything there is to know about everything. And we don't. We know very
No.
little.
Yeah.
So
Well,
yeah,
it's only
I feel you.
based on a set of rules that what if someone comes along one day and like takes one of those basic pillars of knowledge away? And I think that I reckon over the next 10, 20 years, we'll see some of the basic rules of the things that we believe about the world, about the universe, about ourselves. Some of that's going to turn out to be completely untrue. And then when one thing falls apart, like everything falls apart. And I'm not into like the whole chaotic aspect of that, but more to question everything
Mm. Yes.
and not take anything for granted.
Have you got an idea of what you think is going to turn out to be untrue? Have you got anything in particular in mind as to what's going to fall away?
I feel some of the beliefs that we have about science, or that, no, here's the thing. When we're spiritual beings, we tend to have either a set of rules, like a particular religion that gives us a set of rules, or we have our own beliefs that are based on our own experiences. But science only has what people have proven to be true based on whatever studies they have. And what I know to be true is that scientists they like facts, of course, like that makes sense, but they also have their own agenda. And what I believe is, on an energetic level, intention is everything. So whatever you believe to be true, you're going to do whatever it takes to make that true. So what you're proving and the facts that you're finding are going to back up whatever you believe to be true. So therefore, the conclusion of whatever study you're doing is going to be tainted by your perspective. Well, there's I come from a really spiritual family, but not in the sense of they don't meditate, they're not religious, they've never done yoga a day in their life. But they just know that the world is so much more than the eye can see, and they base that on their own experiences. So I was brought up to, hearing all these stories of what my parents had experienced and what they had kind of seen and heard and perceived. But they were just like, they didn't necessarily need to label it in any way. It was just like, well, this is how things are. But they also gave me this belief that, you can't really talk about this stuff because people are not open to it. My dad was an airline pilot, so a very analytical, precise profession where, you don't really talk about this stuff. And my mum was in the medical world, so same, like surrounded by very, very scientific and analytical people. And it was like, well, they never had to hide who they were, but they were very aware that most people weren't open to listening to the fact that the world is more complex than we have ever given it credit for. Mm. So a few years ago, I remember buying this book. What's his name? By, probably going to butcher his name. I think it's Masaru Emoto, the doctor who did that study on water.
Yep.
And, putting water in a beautiful vibration and then freezing the crystals and then looking at them and seeing the beautiful patterns that came from that. And then subjecting this water to just the sound and the vibration of hatred and anger and frustration, and then looking at that, and it looked all broken up and fragmented and quote unquote ugly. And I didn't actually read the book. I think it's called Water. It's something very simple like that. But I bought it and I sent it to my dad because he lives in Europe, and my gifts are bought online and delivered because it just makes things easier. And he read it and he said, well, I love the idea and I love the concept. But there were people who disproved that theory, like later on. They weren't ever able to recreate what he did. And at the time that crushed me. I was like, wow, like how can my dad, like with everything that he's taught me, how can he not believe that? But then many years later, what I realized is that, yeah, it's all about intention. Like he wanted to prove something beautiful about the world. So that's what he was able to find, to prove, and to show. But other people wanted to prove him wrong. So they did it entirely differently. And so they got whatever results they were looking for. And I love working with the mind because that's what the mind does. That's its job. Whatever you believe to be true, it's going to find proof of that. So that will be your reality. But you can change anything. Like you can really shift and change and heal from anything, and then change the experience that you have from that, which is fascinating.
It is. I agree. And it really just proved the strength and power of intention, if anything.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, and that is something that has been in the forefront of my mind for the past year is intention. Um, everything, like your world is created with your intention. You know, what you're surrounded by, who you're surrounded by, how healthy you are, you know, all that sort of stuff is, you know, it comes from your intention first, your mind first, what you want.
Mm.
And I find that incredible because it just shows us how powerful we truly are. We're incredibly powerful and we have no
Mm.
idea.
Yeah.
Mm,
But I
it's
think in so many ways we miss out on some of the magic by trying to put it into a system and trying to make sense of it and understand it, because you're trying to understand something that's entirely quantum with like your
.3D.
very critical mind.
Yeah.
um, and honestly, I think some of the beauty of it is just to kind of flow with it. You don't have to really fully understand how it all works, but you can still kind of just enjoy it and smile at it. And so that's how I really aspire to live my life.
Mm. Yeah, that's beautiful. I think, yeah, part of the whole spiritual realm for me and, you know, this world that I've tapped into so much more recently is the fact that I love the fact that there's mystery. There's so much mystery about it. I find that like super, like part of the exciting part about it is the fact that I,
Mm.
I know very little about it. And there's so much wonder that I have no idea about. I think
Mm.
that's, yeah, the coolest part. Um, so Shah, what's your story? Like, why are you doing the stuff that you're doing today? What led you to being here today? I mean, you talked about your family and the fact that they're spiritual. So obviously, you know, you got some of that or a lot of that. Yeah.
Yes, but they never taught me what to do with that or how to navigate um, what I could do in terms of the energetic gifts that I have. Um, because for them, it was just like, this is how it is. Like they're incredibly intuitive. Um, but I never knew how to navigate that. And therefore I thought, well, I'm not like that. I don't have those gifts. But also another thing with my family is that, I mean, a lot of people that I talk to think, well, that must be ideal to be like, come from a spiritual family is really open to all of this. But um, what my family also had was a bucket load of trauma and no idea how to feel their feelings and to heal any of that or what to do with it. Like they just had no idea. So what I know now is that generationally, we just handball to the next generation. Like if we don't heal it, we just pass it on to our kids. So there's so much of my healing that's not even mine, and that seems so unfair and exhausting. But it's a gift because then I get to really truly understand it and want to help others with it. So my story was very much that my parents, well, they were both born and bred in Africa. Both had the kind of upbringing where they were not loved to the extent that they could have been loved. Like my mother was loved, but she was she was born premature, and her mother at the hospital was told, like back in those days in Africa, she was born so early and so small and so fragile that they told her, look, you've got 2 babies at home, go back to your children, this one's not going to survive. And so she never had that initial bonding with her mother. And her grandmother believed in her. She stayed with her, and she nursed her back to life. And she's an incredibly strong woman. But that initial kind of bonding with her mum was never there. So she spent a lot of her time kind of trying to make up for that. And that led her to actually become a nurse and a midwife and help have a lot of love for premature babies and help them, and use her. I only have realized in the last year how much like my whole lineage is healers. I never believed myself to be that kind of person until a few years ago. So I was like, oh, I don't actually like people that much. I like animals, I like nature, but people are assholes. But then, well, my dad came from the kind of family where there's so much trauma in his family that I'm actually quite surprised that he managed to be a semi-normal human being and not turn into a psychopath, because he was completely starved of love as a baby, as a child. He went to boarding school at age 5. His parents would forget to pick him up from boarding school. And when he was 16, his father tried to kill his whole family. So there's a lot of, stuff there. Yeah. But because they didn't know how to navigate any of that, they just shoved it down and kept on going. And they also, their first child was a girl, and she died of leukemia, which was a very slow and painful experience. Then they lived in Rhodesia at the time. They went through the whole Civil War thing with my dad going to work, them not knowing if he was going to come home. So like their nervous system was really high alert all the time. Then we sailed across an ocean, we arrived in the UK, then we moved to France, and we just kept on going. Just kind of, so now, in the last few years of their life, my parents they're so grateful for everything, because they know how challenging life can be. And now they live in this house in Burgundy in France, right next to a river, like literally next to a river. And they're just so peaceful, and they grow their own veggies and their herbs, and they're like such hippies now. But basically, I grew up and I had my own kind of, what had been shown to me was just keep on going, don't feel your feelings, just, go through it. And my parents are wonderful people. They're very loving people, but they had no idea how to teach me how to process emotions. And so me as a very sensitive person, I just like built up all these shields and pretended that I was fine all the time, and never showed anybody how I was actually feeling, because that had, in my experience, caused me to be rejected, or, any of my gifts. It was kind of, those were all things that I was rejected for. So I just kind of built myself this really like fortress around myself, and then experienced a lot of trauma and grief through my life, which made it even worse. And then I ran away from Europe thinking, this is awful, I'm going to run away, I'm going to go to Australia and I'm going to be fine. And I did. And honestly, I didn't realize how much our environment carries a vibration and an energy. And growing up in Europe, where there have literally been, people have starved at different times. There's been world wars, there's been massacres, there's been a lot of like blood in the earth. And I didn't realize how much I could feel that until I came to Australia. And I got here and I was like, everything feels so light. Everything feels so easy. Like, it's like my body can move more freely. And I didn't quite understand why. I just knew that that was the case. But then I still tried to like not feel my feelings. When something came up for me, I was like, no, that doesn't belong in my life. I'm happy now. Until I had kids and I started my own business, and like, really long story short, I completely burnt out. And then I got to a point where a friend of mine took her own life. And on the day of her funeral, so I've had a few funerals in my life, I tend to avoid them because obviously don't know how to feel my feelings. So don't want to go to anywhere where there's any triggers for emotion. And I made up the excuse that, well, I've got a newborn, so I've got to stay at home with my newborn. It's raining today, so I'm not going to go. But a few people called me that day, and every single one of them, there were 3 people who said, I don't know why, she had everything. And those exact same words, like, why did she do it? She had everything. And like, that was the thing, like from the outside, this woman was beautiful, and she was kind, and she had a lovely husband, and she had a lovely house. She had this beautiful child. Like, it was on the outside, it was glossy and glamorous and wonderful. But her inner world, I assume, was a shit show. And so I started to really question, like, look at my own life and go, well, yeah, everything's great. I've got this successful business. I've got an amazing husband. I've got these beautiful, healthy children. I've got all these things. Like, I've ticked all the boxes, but I'm not happy. And so I kind of just went, okay, well, what? I started to get a little bit obsessed about, well, what is happy? Like, what does make you happy, and why and how? And I've always had a fascination for human behavior and psychology. And so I started diving into a lot of research and going, well, how can I bring more happy into my life? So that started with the awareness that I needed to make space and have some alone time to just process, and that I was going to have to actually feel all the things that I had never allowed myself to feel. So that was beyond terrifying. But what I realized is that we avoid our feelings because we think that they're so big and they're going to rip us apart. But when you actually do sit with them, they move through you. And I really had this sensation that, well, when I started my healing journey and I started to feel these emotions and I actually felt them physically move through my body, I realized, well, it's the resistance to the emotion that causes the pain. And we are locking this density in our field, in our physical body, because we're resisting our human experience. But if you actually allow yourself to feel all of that, and, I'm really cutting to the chase here. It took me a very long time to realize this, but it was, I realized that my pain could not actually hurt me, that I was doing it to myself. And so what happened is people started coming to me and going, well, I don't know what you've done, but whatever you've done, I want me some of that. And people asked me to coach them. And for many other reasons that I won't go into now, like I do not believe in taking medication, trying to reset your emotional state with chemicals. Like, I don't believe it works. And I know that can help some people at different stages, but I don't, I have quite strong opinions about that because of my own trauma. So that's just my stories. But because I had those stories, it never, ever, ever occurred to me, Ruth, to actually go and ask for help. There was never a point where I thought, oh, I should just go to my GP and say, I'm not coping, I need help. It never occurred to me. It's not that I thought about it and decided not to. I just thought, well, I have to sit with this and I have to process it. And so meditation was the thing that I found, and that led me to doing all these things. That one day a friend came over and she said, oh, I was explaining what I was doing. She said, oh, mindfulness. And I didn't say anything, but after she left, I Googled it. I'm not ashamed to say I'd never come across the word mindfulness before. I Googled it and went, oh yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Makes sense. Yeah.
Yeah. And so I started I accidentally became a coach because people asked me to help them. Then I realized that mindfulness is kind of like good for some of the surface stuff, but there's a lot of stuff that runs much deeper. So then I looked at working with the subconscious, which made so much sense because I used to be an interior designer, and what I did was I didn't choose the, colors, and well, I did, but my main passion and focus was the ergonomics of space and psychology of space and how people feel in their environment and how they interact with their environment, but also with each other, depending on the environment. So working with the subconscious was fascinating because I started to understand why when I was at work and I had a lunch break, I would go and watch TED Talks about psychology. And like, that was my idea of fun. I love how we do the things we do and why, and understanding that. And then I started realizing that with my hypnotherapy sessions, I was getting phenomenal results. But really, like, I really believed in the modalities I was using, but the results were really, really amazing. And so I came to realize through working with a healer of my own, she was like, honey, you've got these gifts and you're doing this and you're doing that and you're working with a soul and and I didn't quite know what she meant. Like, the words that she was using, had no idea what they meant, but I could feel within me, I was like, oh yeah, I know that. So a lot of my journey over the last couple of years has been allowing myself to trust what I know on a soul level, even though I can't fully understand it or explain it. Like I was saying, it's really hard to articulate, but it doesn't matter. I don't need to articulate it. What I need to do is help people. So, I can't really, it's not very easy to market yourself. And my marketing coaches have had a terrible time with me because they try and give me a strategy, and my strategy is to follow what feels right for me in that moment. So they don't like that very much. But yeah, it's just like this constant evolution of just, as much as possible, I try and stay in alignment and authentic to who I am in this moment, and knowing that who I am right now could be completely different in a couple of months' time. And that's okay. And I don't have to label it. So yeah, I thought I was going to try and give you the short story, but that was a very long story.
No, that was great. That was, I mean, super powerful, super powerful. It's no wonder that you're doing what you're doing today. How are those walls going for you now? They still there? Still around?
No,
No? Not at all?
they oh no, there's, I think we sorry, I'm drinking cacao and I've got some chili in it and it's sensitive to that.
You're right. Do you need some water or something? You can go get a drink.
No, I'm okay. I think there's always walls, and when we think that we've broken down the walls, we just go a level deeper and then there's more. And I've been finding that very much for myself at the moment. So one of the big things that was a massive trauma in my life was losing one of my best mates he was like a brother to me, and I was very young at the time. And it shattered me in so many ways. But what I'm finding is that I felt like I healed the grief, and I can actually, it's funny because now I can talk about it, but for like 10 years, I couldn't talk about it because I would shake too much and I would feel too much. But what I'm realizing now is that now that I've healed that resistance and that pain that it was causing me, I can actually go deeper and find the gifts, and realize that all that on a soul level, like, because I work with the soul and I do a lot of past life work and all of that, I'm able to really kind of process what actually happened and why I met him in this particular lifetime, and why our experience unfolded the way it did, and what we were both learning, and what on a soul level we'd agreed to learn. Whereas, for about 15 years, I was just angry at life, and so bitterly angry. And I couldn't find that. I couldn't realize that that was the person who showed me what unconditional love was. It wasn't my parents. It wasn't my real brothers. It wasn't anyone around me. It was him. And so you need someone to be able to show you that, so that you can then integrate it and then give it to others. And so that's something that I very much work on in myself and for my clients. And also I've got kids. And the truth is, when you have kids, all of your stuff comes up because you'll just revert to however you were taught to operate as a child. That'll come out when you're talking to your own children. So being able to really find that inner space of calm and authenticity, and be able to radiate out unconditional love, is something that I aspire to just do that all the time. But the reality is, I'm human and I've got my stuff and I've got like experiences that come and push my buttons. And anyone who tells you that they just walk around like a bubble of love, I don't buy it. Sorry, don't buy it. We've all got our biases. So yeah, I've smashed down those walls, but they still sometimes, like, there's other stuff that pops up and I think, oh, but like I said, we all live within the realms of our belief systems. And the thing is, we have no idea what those belief systems are. They just make up our reality. That's just the way it is. So until you start to question or you have an experience that leads you to kind of, I guess, press up against one of those walls, you don't realize it's even there.
Mm.
So yeah, I've still got plenty, but I got a sledgehammer and I'm going at it.
And your hard hat and you're good to go. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, nice. I like it. Can we talk about you've come to me with like a few, like a probably 3 times now. There's that chili again. Are you okay?
That's chilly, but that's also energy. I find
Oh
when
yes.
energy flows through me, often I cough.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm interested to see what you're about to say.
um the you've come to me like I think 3 times, 3 separate times when you have gone, I've either written some stuff down that has come to me about you that I should tell you, or I need to tell you, or whatever it is. And I'm like, I'm so like, this past year for me has been like, I've just been taking everything from everyone, like
Yeah.
whatever you've got for me, like if I can learn something, if I can grow from this, then yeah, give it to me. Right.
Yeah.
And so there's this one, and I'm putting myself out here now. Are you okay with this?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Um, so there was one time where you told me about a past life where I was a guy, and I obviously had some sort of accident, and they were wheeling me, on a gurney into the hospital or whatever. And there was a woman there, and she was obviously my partner or my wife or whatever. And she was sobbing uncontrollably because she thought she was losing me. But myself, as the guy in this timeline or whatever, was like really at peace because I had this knowing that I was going to see her again. And I was like, it's all good. Like, I'm going to see you again. And I was letting go, and there was like I felt a peace, and then I obviously died. Right.
Yeah.
So, I'm just, fuck, I don't even know how to word what I want to ask you right now. A couple of things actually. And I'll pay you for this later. um, did it seem kind of like modern-ish? Like what?
Yeah. So what's really kind of blowing my mind at the moment is that, so I should explain, like in my family, that's the thing, like my parents, their belief in past life is based on the fact that they've been able to at times tune into their own past lives and know and experience something that has led them to believe that, they've had them, and it's not what they've been told. So for me, that has happened in my work. It's mainly come through in the last like year. And I'm okay talking about it now, but a few months ago, this probably wouldn't have been the case. It was very, it made me feel really vulnerable to actually like reach out to people. And I only did it for people who were close friends of mine, but had also worked with me. So they knew that, quote unquote, I'm not a crazy person. But also they were kind of open to it. And you see, when I channel people's past lives, I'm never channeling the lower vibrations to freak them out because something happened. And, I think when people do that, it's all their ego. They want to kind of like prove something. For me, it's more what I felt with that particular experience, I hadn't planned to do that. I was sitting in meditation and I felt like your energy came to me. And this has happened a few times. It's like someone that I know that I love in this particular human experience. Their energy comes to me and says, come, I need your help. And it's like our souls or our higher selves, or I don't really know what words to use. But it felt like they're like, come help me with this. Like my energy exists over here and I need your help to untangle it. So what it felt like for me in that particular experience is that your soul was willing to just move on and move to the next thing. But this person that was there, she was a woman. It wasn't clear whether she was like partner, sister, friend, don't know, but there was so much love and so much desperation of her like not wanting to let go that was actually stopping you from fully I guess moving on. Like I said, it's hard to articulate and I'm not quite sure I'm using the right words, but I think you get it. So that's what I was doing in that situation, was just kind of witnessing it, because often, when stuff comes up for us spiritually, it just needs to be witnessed and acknowledged. Sometimes you don't really need to do something with it, but my intention is always to just hold that space and hold that energy and bring light to whatever needs to be. It feels like an untanglement. Like the way I perceive energy is like lots of different threads and they all go in different directions, and they're all like our energy systems all got these different ties to all kinds of things, and sometimes it's time to kind of just dissolve those ties. So that's what that experience was, and it was really weird for me, and in a way I was like, well, I don't need to tell Ruth that. But there's what I do believe is that everything that we experience in this particular lifetime is always directly related to other lifetimes, because we've all lived so many different lifetimes that some of them are completely irrelevant to your experience here. But if something pops up for you and you can't quite explain why you feel a particular way or what's going on, it's often that there's stuff that you've brought from another lifetime. But what really blows my mind here, Ruth, is that before, it used to very much be like past lives, where I would see something and it would very clearly be another time and place in history. Whereas that particular experience and another few that have come up, sometimes in sessions with clients or sometimes when I'm just in meditation and it's a close friend of mine, that I'll witness something of theirs. It seems to me like our energy exists in different bodies at the same time, if that makes sense. It's not like, and when you look at in a quantum sense, like time is a construct. So it's like, well, it's not really linear. That didn't seem like it was, 50 years ago or so. It really felt like it was impacting your particular experience here because it was kind of happening right here and now.
Do you think that maybe you told me or you saw it because I was maybe about to come into contact with that person again here?
That's interesting. Do you think that?
Maybe.
Absolutely, possibly, yeah. And maybe that's why it needed to be witnessed. I was talking to a friend yesterday. She was saying, like, what do you think about, like, when you keep on bumping into the same person, like someone, you keep on seeing the same person? And my perspective on that is that we're all messengers for one another. We're all connected and we aspire to all help each other, right? We think that we're here to have a family and build a house and make money, but we're actually we're all here to serve one another. And I was telling her, like, I believe that you're bumping into that person because there's a connection, there's an interaction that needs to take place. And it might be that that person's connected to you and it's a friendship. Maybe it's just like words of wisdom. There's something that they have that energetically will spark something in you. but you know, that's why you keep on bumping into them. These are opportunities to get that particular message, but you get to choose whether you take that opportunity or not. Because she was saying it'll happen with one particular person, then I won't see them again, and it'll be another person that I keep on, you know, seeing everywhere. And I'm like, well, you know, what's the worst that could happen if you actually went up to that person and say, hey, I've noticed that I keep on bumping into you. My name is so and so, and just see what happens. Because sometimes you don't actually need to have this incredible experience, but you need to energetically connect with that person. And there's something in you that gets activated through that process. So I can't fully explain it or understand it, but I've experienced it myself, and I've seen other people experience it as well. And that's the part of the whole magic that's wonderful, that, you know, you can take what you need and just not fully need to understand.
Yeah.
But absolutely, if the first thing that pops up for you is that maybe I was about to meet that same person, I would trust that. Now I want to know more.
I'll talk to you after. Um, uh, it actually, what you just said there about just interacting, like actually, you know, talking to that person, you know, if you bump into them constantly, because there is something that you are going to get, or they are going to get, or you know, both of you at the same time are going to get from each other, that, you know, either levels you up or completes something within you that needs completion, or whatever it is, right? I've definitely experienced that multiple times, especially like throughout my life, but especially this last year, and especially through this podcast. I feel like I've just
Yeah.
gone from strength to strength with every single person that I've talked to, because there's been some magic in every single conversation that I've personally have gotten out of, which has been incredible, and I'm so grateful for. And it also takes me back to, have you read the Celestine Prophecy?
Yes, yes, I have actually.
Yeah.
Many years ago, but
Yeah, like it was a long time ago when I read it as well. And it's actually come back into my consciousness again. Like just the other day, someone was talking, so I think I have to fucking read it again. But yeah, it in there it talks about how, you know, when you have those little moments with complete strangers, but there's something there and you can't really put your finger on what it is, or that you like you said, you bump into them every day, they might be a complete stranger, but you know, if you actually just go, hey, like, I'm Ruth, I just kind of saw you sitting there and I like your hat, or whatever, like whoever,
yeah.
like whatever, like just start a conversation, and you'll more often than not, and I've definitely experienced this in the past, that you will have something kind of mind-blowingly in common, and
Yeah.
you'll get something, like you'll get a richness out of that conversation that you would never have expected from
Yeah.
just talking to a stranger. And I think, yeah, I think that needed to come up. I don't know, I have
Mhm.
this feeling that people needed to hear that today. But yeah,
Yeah,
that's
yeah,
cool. That's
absolutely.
really cool.
I think on a human level, like we crave connection above anything else. That's what we need. We need more than we need food and water. Like we could not, um, we would not survive without connection,
Mm.
and we're starved of it. So I think it's a beautiful thing to be able to just walk up to a stranger and just smile at them and like just say something, because turns out like you'll make their day. They'll walk away from that interaction kind of with a little bit of a spring in their step. And then they'll go and interact with the next person. And that's how you create a beautiful ripple effect.
Yes.
It's not about, and it, you know, it's really tricky to, well, for me to be able to do that, because I grew up kind of watching my mum. My mum's this person who she just loves people, and she's very outgoing and very spontaneous and energetic. And she used to just embarrass the crap out of me when I was a kid, because she had this ability to just like, see a lady looking beautiful and like go and touch her on the shoulder and say, "You look amazing in that dress." Or like go and help a stranger, or like, play with a kid that she'd never met before, or just like she just walks around loving people, and just like sending out like this confetti of just bubbly, wonderful enthusiasm. And it was so embarrassing because I was like really an introvert. And she's, "Oh my God." And I was like, "Stop, like just talking to everybody." But she made the world a better place by just walking around in that way. And I've had so many people, tell me later on, like, "Your mum she really changed my life because she cared." Like she just cared. She had a conversation with me one day when she saw that I was having a crap day, and she just came over and asked me how I was. Like we exchanged a few words and then she was off. And that's what I believe. Like that's like angels on earth do exist. And yeah, my mum's one of those people. She just like goes around making people better.
Mm.
Um, but yeah, it was very difficult for me to watch that and just like not be that kind of person, because I thought that I wasn't that kind of person. I thought that I was more like my dad, and he doesn't kind of really well, he doesn't really know how to connect with people, so he just kind of like he doesn't.
Yep.
um and it's funny, like when we say it, still to this day makes me cringe when I hear people say, "I'm the kind of person who," I'm like, oh. Because if you're the kind of person who does that, you're the kind of person who doesn't do anything else that's not that. So you've just put yourself in a neat little tight box.
Mm.
So when I started to kind of like burst those different bubbles of like, well, I'm not the kind of person who goes to talk to strangers and actually do it, it just made my life so much better. And I met so many like really fun, beautiful people.
Mm.
So yeah, go talk to strangers. It's a wonderful
I was
thing.
literally about to say that. Folks, if you're listening right now, the best thing that you could possibly do for yourself and for the world at large is to just I don't know, you don't even have to like talk to people. Maybe just look at someone and genuinely like smile at them or
Yeah,
something, you know? Like, and that'll just be like, that'll blow people away. Like strangers like, whoa, like
yeah,
just smiling. Why are you and that's the thing as well. Like people are like, our society is so, where we're at, it's like it's a lot of the time people are going to question your motives behind
yeah, absolutely. And you
what
know what,
you're doing.
Ruth, I've had so many healing sessions with people where by tuning into their energy, like I felt that they've had past experiences where they had to hide. And a few people, it's actually come up that they lived in times of war where your survival depends on you just like not looking at people, like keeping your head down. And you can't actually smile at people, because if you're smiling in a time where things are really like the world is at war, you have something to hide, or you're doing something wrong, because you can't possibly be happy at this point in time. And then people would, through wartime, when people would they would denounce each other, and they would, kind of get benefit from someone else's going down. That is still very much present in people's energy fields, even though they don't realize it. It's like, I'm not allowed to be too happy. I'm not allowed to show that I'm happy, because someone's going to like attack me. And it's something that we have to heal. That we really do, because um, it's not benefiting anyone, and it's incredibly exhausting. Like there's some people who have that particular type of energy. They suffer from things like chronic pain, or chronic fatigue, or depression, and it's nothing. Sometimes I've worked with people who have depression, and they like consciously they're like, well, nothing's ever really happened to me. Like I have no reason to be depressed. But your energy it goes way beyond your human experience in this particular body. So yeah, we're complex.
Mm.
But anything that can bring in more joy into your life, like just embrace it.
Yeah, absolutely. I wholeheartedly agree with that. What do you think is going on in the world right now, Sha?
Um, I think people are waking up. I think we're going through a very crucial point in history. But I think there's two sides to this. I think this is an absolutely crucial point in history, where people are starting to question how we do things as a society, as like a world, and we're just going like, wait a minute, it's not working. Because I had this a few years ago, I had this realization through, spending a lot of time in meditation and kind of just like letting go of a lot of stuff. And I remember one day coming out of meditation and going, oh my God, the whole world is crazy. Like everyone's playing this stupid game and nobody's happy, but everyone's kind of like, I saw a beautiful friend of mine had this quote somewhere and she said, like, there's no game of chess if the pawns refuse to play. And it just popped into my head now. But I remember that day, I remember thinking and deciding within myself, like, I'm not playing anymore. I'm not playing your bullshit games. It doesn't work for me. It doesn't work for you. And you can't make me. You can't make me buy into this reality. And so I started really recreating my own rules and helping others to do the same. Because like really nobody can make you do anything. Like you consent, even when it comes to your belief systems and all of that. Like we need to take responsibility for the fact that nobody can force your belief systems onto you. You take them or you don't. But you, to some degree, you have accepted to take on that belief or that trauma. I'm not saying it's your fault, because if you don't know, you don't know. But once you do know, if you continue playing the game, well, you're an idiot. I'm sorry, but really, like, I think what's happening in the world right now is that people are starting to realize that they can choose to be sovereign beings, and that really, like, if we knew our rights, if everybody knew their own rights, and abided by them, and actually used the power that they have, I think the world would be very different. But there's a lot of work that needs to happen for that to take place, and it's collective. And I run events and group circles and healing events, and I think at most of them I always thank people for showing up, because every person who shows up for any type of healing, their individual healing is the healing of the collective. Like everything counts, every little bit that we do counts. And I don't buy into the whole thing that like we're at war and like blah, because your energy is your power. Your ability to focus is your own personal power. So focus on what is meaningful to you. And I think people are starting to wake up to that and going like, actually, what is meaningful to everybody else and everybody else's rules don't necessarily have to apply for me. Like I get to choose. You don't have to have a mortgage. You don't have to send your kids to the school system if you don't believe in it. You don't have to live by other people's rules. And when you decide to do it on your own terms, then that is not only really empowering, but I believe that you get support as well. Like we're just the ones that are in this physical form, like bringing that light in, and it's our responsibility, and we're not here by accident. I think that anyone who is here in this particular point in time has a role to play, and like get onto it, people. Like seriously, like you're not here by accident, so you may as well do what you came here to do. And I believe that that's also true for people who are doing awful things in the world. Like I really truly believe that is their purpose. And if you're never triggered by anyone, so I grew up in France, right? There was a time in France where there was an incredible difference between the rich and the poor. And that is still true in the world. Like, we look at movies like The Hunger Games and go, oh, like, no. And it's like, well, it's kind of like a theatrical documentary, really, when you look at it. Like,
yeah,
there are people who, benefit and are entertained by other people's demise in so many ways. But basically in France, like it got to a point where the poor just went, we're not taking it anymore. And they started chopping people's heads off, and they called it the French the Revolution, and they celebrate it every year. So I'm not saying that we should go and chop people's heads off, but we need to kind of like
Sure.
stand up and just go like, I'm not playing this game and you can't make me.
Yeah.
Um, but I think people are starting to realize that, but it's not easy. Like when you start to kind of switch into that decision that you're going to empower yourself, you have to go through all the reasons that you were disempowered, and that takes so much courage. And it's really challenging, and it's a really lonely path when you start. But I don't believe there's any other way. Like I don't believe in living a life that's unfulfilling. Like I'm just not that kind of person. Like if I don't like something, or if I'm not passionate about something, I just won't do it. And I can't make myself any more than anybody can make me.
Amen, sister.
Mm.
You have something exciting happening soon. You're starting a podcast. Is this right?
I am. I actually started a podcast over a year and a bit ago because I really wanted to, and I had a lot of things to say, and just I wanted to give people a different perspective on, how it was all around kind of like mindset and how your mind really works. So I think a lot of people have misconceptions about that. But I just have a lot of stuff to say, and I know that people have always told me that they benefit a lot from hearing me speak, and they like my voice. So I started this podcast at a time when my husband was working away, and I had time in the evenings. I'd put the kids to bed, and I'd just kind of, they were very short episodes, but then things changed in my life, and I really literally did not have the time and space to be able to do it anymore. But it always stayed as this thing that I think was really meaningful and that I enjoyed. And now that I have a little bit more breathing space, I'm going to bring it back. So it's going to be different because I am completely different. My core message hasn't changed at all, but my understanding of how it all works has massively changed. So yeah, I'm just hoping to help people and support them to understand who they truly are beyond what they've been.
Yeah. So how do people find you and your podcast if they want to work with you, if they want to listen to you?
You can find me on my websites at chahigginson.com. So that's Cha with a C. Or on Instagram. I hang out a lot on Instagram, a bit on Facebook, but it's funny, people kind of find me when they need me. That's always been the case. So yeah, if anyone feels that they need me, come find me, and yeah, I'd be honored to assist anyone on their journey.
And you're definitely here for that. I can attest to that. Cha, thank you so much for your time and your wisdom and your stories.
Thank you. Thank you for everything that you do.
Thank you. Yeah, it's my pleasure. I'm here for it, that's for sure.